let's be honest with each other. The most practical preservation that anyone can do to put themselves at the top of their own priority list is to prioritize your own individual health and make it a top priority. However, according to the World Health Organization, they found 1 in 4 women and 1 in 3 men do not get enough physical activity to remain in tip-top shape on a regular basis. Meanwhile, Forbes reports that only 28% of Americans are meeting physical activity guidelines set out by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The CDC also found in a study they released in January of last year that Americans' physical activity level largely depends on whether they live in a rural or urban setting. However, regardless of the statistical evidence, my friends, our physical priority in health is for us to set the standard. For my friend, Elliot Hasoon, he is a body transformation coach, digital nomad, originally hailing from the UK and now traveling the world, helping people with their fitness. As a mindset coach, he also takes a holistic approach to fitness, helping people with their personal development, self-improvement, self-confidence, and mindset work. He has a personal connection to wanting to ensure that folks that he works with, whether in person or internationally, reach the fullest heights of their own physical potential. You see, he took a summer trip about a decade ago that really changed his life and view on the importance of prioritizing your health and fitness. And as an overweight teenager, he saw the effects of not taking care of your body and making sure that it is in the most optimal form it can be. And Hasoon joined me this week to talk about why our physical health should be one of our top priorities in life, his own personal transformational journey, and some helpful habits we can all adopt to get into tip-top shape. If you're someone who wants to set a New Year's resolution and stick to it when it comes to a fitness perspective, this is a conversation that you can't afford to miss. And lucky for all of us, my conversation with Hasoon starts right now. So without further delay, I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. So, Elliot, if you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, my friend, and I'm super excited to learn about how you're moving the needle of progress forward in the fitness industry. Great to see you today, and thank you for a few minutes.
That sounds amazing. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, Elliot, I know you're a fitness and body transformation coach, and you help people transform themselves from inside and out, my friend. So I'm wondering if we can start our conversation by you telling me what makes you so fabulous, my friend, and why do you love what you do?
Well, I absolutely love what I do because of I know the impact that health and fitness can have on people. I had a similar experience myself when I got started on my own journey. It was very, very profound. I went from being a very, very self-conscious, overweight teenager who experienced a little bit of bullying to someone who then ended up making health and fitness his thing. And it completely transformed the way I felt about myself. And once I found out the secret behind what worked for me, I was like, I can't keep this to myself. I want to help other people achieve this. Unfortunately, I discovered that in my teenage years, and I know there's people in their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, maybe even their entire lifetime don't ever get to work out this health and fitness thing. So for me, once I understood the impact that it could have, I really felt that calling to help other people do the same.
Yeah, and Elliot, I'm a firm believer that if you value your physical health, there's positive benefits for your mental and psychological health. Would you agree with that?
I couldn't agree more. And I was on another podcast this morning who mentioned a question about whether someone should prioritize their mental or their physical health first. And I'm very, very passionate about telling people that if your mental well-being is not in a good place, of course, see to that as soon as you can. However, we should never underestimate the power of the physical health and what that can do to our mental well-being. I look at it as 4 to 5 pillars: training, exercise, if you want to put that in the same category, nutrition, sleep, and stress management. Maybe you throw hydration in there as well. And if you cover all of these things, you are going to feel so much better from a mental well-being standpoint. So just by looking after your physical health, you can then have a profound knock-on effect on how you show up in the world, how you're feeling about yourself, and all those other type of things. So I think that, yeah, they really fall hand in hand with each other.
And just building on that, it can also increase your resilient spirit if you're in a better physical state, can't it?
Absolutely. I think that we just got to always look for those crossovers in life. I think that sometimes we think that things are very, very one dimensional, but us today having this conversation is going to impact my day in terms of how I'm going to feel about the quality of the conversation we've just had, the way that I'm going to communicate off the back of this. You're going to feel good as off the back of this as well. And I think that sometimes we think, well, 1 + 1 = 2. So if I do my workout, that's going to help my body be physically stronger. But what we don't also recognize is that when we get used to going through resistance that we go through in the gym or pushing ourselves past limits that we didn't realize that we could exceed before, whether it comes to our cardio or our lifting a new weight for a certain time, that can be transferred into other areas of our life because it's the same concept. It just needs to be applied to a different thing. So if we're going through something a little bit more challenging, a little bit more emotionally challenging, for example, we can tap on our physical resilience. Of course, it's not exactly the same, but it is transferable. They are transferable skills. So the better we are in terms of physically resilient, the better we are going to be emotionally resilient and everything that comes along with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Alan, I'm gonna share just a bit about myself, my friend. So I was born with what's called a spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy. So if I am not active, I lose my muscle strength and endurance faster than most people. And I actually
Uh-huh.
found out at the age of 9, my friend, that I wouldn't be able to walk for the duration of my a life without assistance of a walker and a wheelchair. But I placed a high priority on fitness because, active movement is important to me. Because if I don't use my muscles, I lose them. So tell me about the importance of being active and really making that a priority because it really is a commitment, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I love that you've prioritized it. And of course, you've seen the importance of it as well. And I think that at the end of the day, we've got to recognize it's a choice for all of us, right? To remain active, to remain healthy, or to not simply. And I think that sometimes there is the element, maybe when we're a little bit younger, where we think of it more from an aesthetic standpoint. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's what got me into the gym in the first place. And from that pursuit of something that was aesthetic and maybe people would say it was done for vanity purposes, it actually led me to helping thousands of people, which I've done today. So I always say that if something is leading you, but it seems like something that's maybe a little bit vain or it's a little bit more around yourself, there's nothing wrong with that. If that gets you started, on something that's really going to help your mental and physical well-being, then absolutely do it. But also when it comes to later in life as well, we've got to recognize that our physical well-being is going to impact how we are able to play with our children, for example, how we are going to be playing with our nieces, our nephews, and all those type of things. Can we keep up with them? Can we lift them on our shoulders? And then also when we get later in life as well, I work with a lot of people in their 50s, their 60s, and sometimes even their 70s. And they will think, well, I don't need to strength train. I don't really want muscle, etc. But what they don't recognize is the muscle that they are having, just like it supports you to walk, is the muscle that's going to help them stand up on their own from their chair. It's not about, having biceps or anything like that. It's literally about making sure that if you have a fall, you're resilient enough to resist that, essentially. So that's why that physical activity becomes so, so important early stages in life, because it's laying down the foundations for the future. And also, when you get later into life, I think that muscle mass, we also got to recognize that muscle mass, as we already know, if we don't work our muscles, yes, they will regress. And like you mentioned, it happens a little bit faster for you. And then also, if you get older on top of that as well, we also then end up losing muscle. So it's even more important for us to remain physically active so we don't go through that period of regression that ends up then leading us to a lot more challenges later down the line.
Yeah, and prioritizing our fitness can also have practical benefits. I know you gave the example of being able to stand when we're older, so it can also have practical benefits too, can't it?
Absolutely. And again, I think that sometimes we think about fitness as being in the gym or going for that long run, but how about just walking up the stairs and not feeling breathless, or being able to go on that hike and not being worried about whether you can actually do it or not? And many times I get parents who reach out to me. I work with a lot of 30, 40-year olds, and quite often their tipping point was, I want to keep up with my young son or daughter. And I think that sometimes, like we mentioned, it feels like it's just okay. Well, yeah, I want to be able to go for a 30-minute jog, or I want to be able to bench press, 100 pounds or whatever it might be. But it's sometimes those real day to day things. And that's why I work with people who are quote unquote general population, normal people, so to speak, and not athletes, because I find it incredibly rewarding to work with someone who now says, well, I can run after my child and they can't keep up with me anymore. Or I can run up the stairs and before I could barely walk up without getting breathless. That is super meaningful and rewarding to me. And that's why I love to work with the people that I do, because of those are the real changes that make real differences in real lives.
Yeah, and I know for you personally, it's been quite the personal journey from being an overweight teen to one of the more sought after personal trainers in the UK, my friend. So, congratulations on all the
Thank you.
success that you've had, my friend. Friend and I'm wondering if you can reflect for a moment on where you've come and where you're going, my friend, and what all this success means to you from a personal perspective.
Yeah, it's personally super, super rewarding. And if you told the 15-year-old version of myself that we would be here today, I think he would have a hard time believing it. But I think there's something to be said about just starting with what you really, really want to achieve within yourself, right? And for me, I recognized that the power was in my hands. I always give credit to that younger version of myself because I don't know where I had that self-awareness to say, hey, Elliot, you don't actually enjoy the way you feel or look right now. What can you do about it? But for some reason, I was given that insight, which I'm incredibly grateful for, which genuinely led me on a route to self-discovery and growth, not just from a physical perspective, but from a mental perspective as well, because I started to get some mental well-being benefits. My confidence increased, and I recognized that, as I mentioned at the very start, I had worked out this health and fitness thing for myself. So let me go and try and do this with other people. And I think that primarily it came from a place of wanting to help. Before being a personal trainer and a health and fitness coach, I actually wanted to be a teacher. So it's interesting how that evolved into helping people and teaching people about their bodies, health and fitness, and essentially creating the changes in their lives that I wasn't expecting to make, but I have been able to make. And I think that when it comes to the success that I've personally had, I always like to remind people that I've been a trainer slash coach for 11 years now. So I have just been working on my craft year after year after year. And I wasn't expecting that overnight success, but I was just focusing on getting a little bit better. And I was driven by a passion in these early stages. So that's what's allowed me to get to the stage I'm at today. And it's what's going to help me get to that next level where I want to continue to help people. I want to continue to help people to grow. And, the world out there is there's a lot of people still to be healed and still a lot of people to be improved from a health and fitness standpoint. And whilst there's still people there, then I'm going to be continuing to help them grow and improve in any way, shape, and form that I can.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Alan, I want to talk to you about commitment and accountability in fitness because before we started recording, you had mentioned that you're dealing with a lot of people now that want to cash in on their New Year's resolution. But, New Year's comes once a year, and some people stay committed and some people fall off. So tell me from a health and fitness perspective, how do you think commitment and accountability are interconnected?
I think that they definitely fall hand in hand. I think that realistically, a lot of people, and maybe I'm going to tell you something that I don't share too much on podcasts, but I think I want to make sure that this is known today, which is that I think people underestimate accountability way too much. And so many of us think that we can do things on our own, but we simply don't have those high levels of commitment that maybe we think that we have. And it's beautiful. We might have them in other areas of our lives. And I always refer to me and language learning. I am incredibly committed to my health and fitness. I'm incredibly committed to the business, the coaching business that I run and my podcast, for example. And I'm committed to also learning Spanish. Yeah, I am not fluent yet. So I know that I have shortcomings when it comes to me continuing to learn. I'm committed to the desire of the goal, but I'm not committed to the practice and showing up. So I know personally that I need to have a teacher. I need to have lessons because of that. It's going to hold me accountable. I've got someone who I need to turn up to, someone who I need to show up to, someone who I need to make sure that I am doing my very, very best to learn in that lesson. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. And I could tell you, all my commitment, all my desires, my goals, I've got a Mexican fiance, I've got all the motivation that you could possibly need in the world. And I see this with different clients I work with as well. They have all the motivation in the world and they think that that should lead to the commitment to their health and fitness goals. But we have so much going on in our lives. We really do. We have our responsibilities. We might have kids, we might have jobs, we might have family commitments, all these different types of things. And then we just want to enjoy our lives off the back of that as well. And quite often what we find is that some things kind of fall off, we fall short in certain areas. And that's where I think accountability comes in. I think sometimes people think, well, if I can only do it with someone else, then I'm never going to be able to do it on my own. But that's not the reality of the situation. For me, like coaching, for example, and finding someone to help hold you accountable is not something that you need for life. However, if you've been struggling for even just a year, let alone 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you're still struggling to find that commitment level and you're not reaching out to someone to help you remain accountable because you want to be accountable to yourself, for me, you're doing a disservice because you could have your results in 6 months to a year with someone who can help you get there. And then they can show you how to remain in that place, right? Then you can focus on that self accountability. But better to focus on that self accountability once you're in the position that you want to be in versus you're not even really, 10% into your goal. So I think that that's where they fall hand in hand. I think accountability, of course, it should be to yourself, but quite often to get going, you need someone to help you there, especially if you don't have a lot of experience in that area or you have a lot of other things going on in life. So that's where I'm really, really passionate about telling people, accountability, external accountability doesn't have to be there forever, but it really should be in the beginning stages if you can't find enough commitment to the goal that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. And Elliot, I'm a big believer in finding your passion and purpose in life because, I am someone who says that, if you develop your passion, you're contributing to moving the needle of progress forward because we all have different strengths and abilities. So I'm curious, how do you define discovering your passion and purpose in life? And how do they get equatable to fitness as well?
Yeah, it's a great question and it's an interesting one to discover. And I think that passion is a little easier to find, right? I think we all know what we enjoy and what we like. I think sometimes what we do, unfortunately, is we don't allow ourselves to accept that. We get bogged down with responsibilities, commitments, or maybe we shouldn't be doing something like that. Let's take a person who loves video games. I like video games. I don't love them. I'm not super passionate about them. But many people, when they get into their adult years, might think, no, it's childish. I shouldn't be doing this, etc. But then you look around and there's people who are making a professional living out of streaming on platforms like Twitch or going to these competitions where they are living the dream that they wanted to when they were younger, but they decided to continue pursuing that passion. They didn't give in to, life's responsibilities or what they should have quote unquote done. So I think if you are trying to travel down the route of your passion, don't deny them. If you really love something and you really enjoy something, travel down that path. It might not be your career, but it can still be a very proactive hobby. And I think a lot of people lose those things in their lives, those things that they once loved, or those things that they would love to spend a little bit more time in, but they just never give themselves the opportunity because they feel guilty or they feel like they should be doing something that contributes towards the responsibilities they have in their life. But I think we should always carve out time for our passions. And if we can create careers out of our passion as well, because of that links with our purpose, maybe the video game example for some people is very true. For me, it was a very nice link. I had a lot of passion for health and fitness. I was really, really fascinated by the topic, especially in the early years of my life. And then I was also able to align that with, the purpose of me wanting to teach people, wanting to show people, and wanting them to get out of it what I got out of it and much more as well. So I was fortunately able to link those two things. And then I think if you can combine those two, you're pretty much living the dream. There's nothing better than having a passion that, burns deep within you and then being able to help people just due to the fact that that's your purpose as well. So if you kind of line those two as much as you can, amazing. But don't give up on your passions, even if they're not going to pay your bills, right? Still have them in the form of your hobbies because they will bring you happiness. They will bring you a lot, and you never know what might happen in the future. And then the final thing I have to say on purpose is just be aware of how it evolves. My purpose has taken the form of health and fitness. I don't know if that's going to be forever, but I believe the purpose is helping people to become better versions of themselves, to become, more enriched with their lives and how they show up in the world. And that might take a different form in the future. Right now, it's taken the form of health and fitness because that was my passion. I led down that route and I've become very, very good at it. But who knows where that's going to take me in the future, because of deep down, it's just a desire to help people, to let them show up as their best versions of themselves. I'm going to be open and receptive to whatever form that takes in the future as well.
Yeah, and Elliot, if I asked you to create a motivational video to get people excited about making fitness a priority, how do you think you would structure the video, and what points would you make, my friend?
Well, I'm going to use one that actually my fiance showed me yesterday, which is really, really powerful. I'm actually going to post it up on my Instagram a little bit later today. And basically, it's a video of a older gentleman, right? He is going, it's a split screen, right? You've got the top screen of one version of his life he's living, and the bottom screen is another life version that he's living. And it's super, super powerful. And basically, on the top one, he's living as someone he's about 70 or 80 years old. And the first is him aging with grace and vitality. And the video beneath that is him aging in a way of real poor quality of life because he's not looked after his health. So there's one clip of him maybe putting on his watch, for example, and sitting on his bed and getting himself dressed. And then there's another where his wife is helping him dress and he's putting on a tag for the hospital. And then there's another where he is drinking with his family, right? And he is able to pick up his glass and celebrate. And then there's another where, again, his wife is feeding him out of a cup during a hospital visit. And this, it gives me goosebumps right now. You probably see my hairs raising on the screen here as well. And it just shows us the quality of our choices. And sometimes we don't recognize that the choices that we make today are really planting the seed for the future. And in that situation, he had the choice. He had the choice: do I look after my health and well-being? And the difference was, once again, do your grandchildren visit you at home and you're chasing around after them, or are they visiting you in a hospital bed? And that for me was more than motivational. Like I said, it's still giving me goosebumps now. I'm not even watching that video, and it just reminds us that our health is our responsibility, and the choice of whether we are going to be in a position A or position B really comes down to the actions that we take on a day-to-day basis. And I think there's nothing more powerful than that. It's not going to be someone shouting, David Goggins style motivation. That might work for some people, but that really hit home to me. And I can imagine it's going to hit home for a lot of people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Elliot, I want to know about this summer about a decade ago, my friend, that changed your life and really got you committed to health and fitness. Tell me all about it.
Yeah, that was a pretty awesome summer for me personally. I basically discovered, again, like I mentioned earlier, that I was this overweight teenager by kind of no fault of my own, to be completely honest. I was just being a normal kid, eating food that you were fed at home. I wasn't super genetically gifted or anything along those lines, but I just ended up being a little bit overweight, even though I was quite an active kid. So I was then doing my research and my discovery on how someone gets in shape, right? And it was very, very vague in terms of my research. I was just Googling, David Beckham diet, for example, or Zac Efron diet and training plan, and trying to replicate that the best I could. Unfortunately, that actually aligned with a summer break when I was in school. And I went away and I probably trained on a day-to-day basis. I was able to start off by doing a little bit of home training. Then I got myself a gym membership. It was fortunate that when I was about 15 years of age or something, they had this, maybe it was even 14 years of age, they had this, you can go free to the gym between the time of 3 to 5 p.m. So I was able to capitalize on that. And I spent my whole summer in the gym working out, eating as quote unquote healthy as I could based on my limited understanding of what eating healthy looked like. And I came back from summer break in a much, much different looking person. I must have dropped I don't even know the exact amount, but I probably dropped a fair few kilos, and it was significantly different. And it was also different in the way that I carried myself. And obviously 6 to 8 weeks is kind of a summertime. So it's more than enough time to make progress, especially when you're in the gym every day or something along those lines. So I was able to go away, work on myself. Think of it as, like I always say, like a less impressive version of Captain America going into that capsule and coming out on the other side. That was kind of my experience. I was able to do some real significant changes to my body. And especially being a kid at that stage, no one was really going to the gym or understood any of that. But I was able to take advantage of it because I was just so passionate and I loved it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I want to share just something that I live my life by every day. The motto that I live my life by every day is that inclusion is the gateway to independence. And I think fitness is a great way to promote inclusion, diversity, and equity and equality. So I'm curious, how do you think embracing fitness and the community it builds can also promote an atmosphere of inclusion? I'm curious to get your thoughts there.
Well, I think the beautiful thing about health and fitness is it really doesn't have any prejudice. It's a very neutral thing. And also, I think it's very fair as well. It gives you what you put into it, right? And I feel like that's the most beautiful thing. Like, you go into a gym and you see every single different type of person in there, or you even just step out onto Instagram right now, and it might not be in a gym. People are training from home because they have, tons of YouTube videos and everything along those lines. So that's what I love about health and fitness is I find it super, super inclusive in the sense that it doesn't matter if you are like the quote unquote skinniest person in the world or you are the quote unquote most overweight person in the world. You can take steps towards improving your health and fitness. And unless you are very, very unfortunate in terms of your physical makeup, but I would say that outside of that, around 95, maybe 97% of people have an ability to take a step forward with their health and their well-being, even if that's just going outside for a walk, or if that's drinking more water, or if that's eating a little bit healthier. So the inclusivity of health and fitness from the perspective that it doesn't hold any prejudice and everyone has access to it to some degree. Of course, some will have better access than other. If you're, in poverty, for example, then that might be a bit of a struggle. But generally speaking, if someone's listening to this podcast right now, they are probably blessed enough to have the ability to improve their health and well-being. And that's what I love about it. It creates that inclusivity because we all have access to it to some form of a degree.
Yeah, and I know you're on a mission to help as many people get into the best shape of their lives. So I'm curious how that mission is going, and how do you think we can close the gap in that healthcare and fitness sort of a gap of a lack of resources or disparity? So how do you think we can close the gap when it comes to healthcare and fitness, my friend. And how's that mission going to try and get as many people in the best shape of their lives?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to raising awareness, right? I am just one person on a collective mission, I would say. There's a lot of health and fitness coaches out there who are doing a lot of amazing things. And this is the thing, I am just one person. I'm not going to be able to help every single person with their health and fitness. So I'm very happy that I am on this collective mission with other professionals within my industry as well. There's obviously, and there is always a lot of arguments between what method of what X, Y, or Z is superior, whether it be a diet plan or workout plan. But I'm all about rising above that and just trying to focus on helping as many people as I possibly can. And I've done my very, very best to do that throughout the past decade and more of my career. And having that knock on effect, right? Showing people that health and fitness isn't just this one dimensional thing, but it's something that, like, let's get you in the best position you've ever been in, but let's also show you how to maintain that for the rest of your life. Because if you can stay there, you can then influence others. You can influence your partner, your children, your other family members. And I like to think of it as like a nice knock-on effect to the universe. And I think the main way in which we can close the gap is just information and awareness, right? We have to get that information out there. And that was the reason why I created a podcast, because I knew that there's only a limit to how many people I'm going to be able to work with on a one-to-one basis. But if I can release simplified health and fitness knowledge and give people, understandings of concepts that maybe look really, really complicated, but I can break it down into a way that which they can understand, then that's going to, and for free as well, that's going to help more people. So that's how I spread as far and wide as possible. I can work with people on a one-to-one basis and a collective group basis, but I am only limited to being one man and one individual. So that's why I went down the route of podcasting, because of I can get my message out to the world, and that's what I do on a day-to-day basis to try and continue to spread the word of this mission.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you take sort of a holistic approach, which integrates things like mindset, tactics, habits, and personal building personal development, and those sort of practices that also focus on the mental side of fitness. So tell me about the holistic approach that you've decided to take and why it worked for you, my friend.
I think it's almost impossible to not involve that aspect of things. When I got started in my career, it was very focused on, okay, I'm going to give someone the best workout plan and the best diet plan is going to get them the results. And then I quickly ran into a lot of brick walls, that's for sure. And I recognized that those things have to come hand in hand, right? If someone's struggling with their eating because they have these emotional reasons as to why, and they've never actually digged into their past as to why they are eating emotionally on every single Friday or Saturday night, then we're never going to get anywhere with the most superior diet plan in the world. Or if someone has this deep down reason as to why they sabotage themselves every time they get close to success, and we don't dig into that and get an understanding of that, then we're never going to get the results. And I obviously stay in my lane. I know that I'm a health and fitness coach, and I'm not a therapist or a psychologist by any means whatsoever, but I have been on my own personal journey where I've gone through personal development. I've dug into my traumas. I've dug into the things in the past that kind of make up who I have been to this day in many, many good ways, and in some ways that haven't been super productive. So I try and encourage people to look at it as a very, very complete, holistic, kind of like a very well-rounded process, because I want them to look into every single aspect of their life to understand why they do the things that they do, so we can get them to the place that they want to be. Because if you will run into roadblocks, if you don't look into, the stress that's causing you to eat on a regular basis, the emotional eating, the traumas that are causing you different behaviors, etc., or why you're doing X, Y, or Z. So I really think that the blueprint to success is much, much easier to understand when you know what took you to that place. But I think a lot of introspection and a lot of that's what makes me an even better coach, is that I help and guide people to that, so that they don't just get these results in 6 weeks and then they go because they don't know how to maintain them, because they never worked out what was holding them back in the first place. But they really dig into their makeup and their DNA, and they understand where they come from, so then they can maintain those results on the long-term basis as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Elliot, I know you're someone that believes that consistency and morning routines are important. So tell me, why do you think consistency is so important in fitness?
consistency is the most important thing in fitness, right? We can have results for a few days, few weeks, few months, but that's not what I'm about as a health and fitness coach, or specifically the coaching that I do and the impact that I want to make on the world. I want people to have their results for decades. I want them to live the best version of their life for as long as they can. And that's where consistency comes in. And only when it comes down to things that you do on a day-to-day basis are you going to see results. And this is the thing, when someone goes through a dedicated fat loss phase, for example, they might have to put a little bit more effort in to get the results that they want to. I always refer to it as any time that you probably have had this experience as well, when you've studied for an exam or you're working towards a promotion or a deadline, then you have to put in a little extra work. And that's kind of like people getting towards their first goal, whether it be fat loss or muscle building. But then after, you don't stay at that high pace of working towards the promotion or the exam. You go back to a steady baseline of something that you can do on a regular basis that doesn't stress you out too much, but still allows you to progress in your job or progress in your studies. And that's where I want people to get to, where they are consistently showing up for their exercise on a regular basis, their sleep, their hydration, their nutrition as well. And that's the only way in which we're going to maintain results. Otherwise, the thing with health and fitness is it's rented. It's not owned. You have to continue showing up. And like I said, you have to show up at this super, super intense basis that you had to when you're working towards your real big goal. But if you want to maintain things, you have to continue to do some form of healthy eating, some form of exercise, some form of looking after your mental well-being. And if you don't, you're probably going to end up regressing. And that's why consistency is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And Elliot, I'm gonna combine my last two questions because they're interconnected, my friend. I'm curious, when you look at your life, my friend, I'm curious to ask you, what do you think has been your biggest personal victory to date? And when you look at your overall life, how do you want your personal and professional legacy to be defined?
Oh, I like those two questions. I would say personal victory is probably overcoming my default self. When I was growing up, when I was much younger, and even, into my early 20s as well, I feel like I was living a life, but I almost felt like I was living a life where my hands were tied behind my back, right? I was watching, my life go by and I was making these choices here and there, but I never really felt like I was in control of my thoughts and my actions and everything along those lines until I went through a period of mental well-being, mental well-being difficulties, which led me to hypnotherapy, which really opened up my entire world to recognize that actually my hands aren't tied behind my back. They can be on the wheel if I choose them to be. And from there, that was a big, big personal victory because that allowed me to recognize that I am a conscious being and I can make conscious choices and I can go in the direction that I choose for my life and not just in the direction that my life seems to be taking me. So that was a big personal victory because that unlocked a whole new level of day-to-day living. It's profound, the difference that you can have in your life when you recognize that you are the one in charge, and then you can start making the conscious decisions that take you to where you want to be. So that has led me to being a much, much better coach. That's allowed me to bring in more of the holistic stuff as well, because I've gone through my own personal well-being challenges and victories and overcome those things. That's allowed me to tap into that with my clients as well. And when it comes to my legacy being defined, I just want to be known as someone who helped people on their way, who helps have that knock-on effect to, their children, making better people, essentially. I think that when we're not in our healthiest state, we are not the best versions of ourselves. And I want to create better brothers, sisters, mothers, dads, friends, family members, colleagues, or just humans, full stop. So I want to be known as someone who was able to do that.
Yeah, and I was just before I ask you about how people can get in contact with you, my friend. I know that you're living out there in the UK, my friend. So, and I am coming to you today from Canada, my friend. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on the best part about living in the UK and when you're not working, my friend. How do you define fun? Fun. How do you have fun, my friend?
It's a great question. And funnily enough, I actually left living in the UK on a permanent basis a few years ago, and I've been doing the digital nomad thing ever since. So I've been country hopping, and actually, I'm not in the UK today. I'm in Mexico. That's something that has taken me all over the world. So it's been really, really amazing. One thing I love
Well,
about
I'm
so
sure
go for it.
No, I'm sure that Mexico is warmer than the UK, right?
That's for sure. Without a shadow of the doubt, I spent Christmas in the UK and it was incredibly cold. Today I'm wearing a t-shirt quite comfortably. And yeah, there are definitely benefits from that perspective as well. But yeah, so I was living in the UK for, the majority of my life. And like I said, for the past 3.5 years now, I've been doing the digital nomad thing, which has been amazing because it's allowed me to see what life looks like in many other different places. I met my fiance on the way as well, and we now travel together. So my idea of having fun is usually spending a lot of time with her. We, discover the different countries that we're in together. We just enjoy being in each other's presence, full stop, to be completely honest. So that's generally how I do it. I spend time with family and I pretty much just take the time to spend time with her and we decompress and we talk and we play and we just allow our inner children to come out a lot of the time as well. So that's the way that we pretty much spend our time and enjoy our time outside of the professional side of things. But also at the same time, I have a lot of fun doing my professional things as well. So I love to coach, I love to podcast as well. So I'd like to say that I'm living in that state of fun at all moments.
Oh, well, I have to tell you, your nutritional diet and habits must go on a roller coaster ride of adventure since you're not living in the UK anymore, right?
Yeah, it definitely presents different challenges, but it also presents a lot of opportunities because of I can now relate to people when they're traveling, when they're on the move, when they're going on holidays as well. And something that's very much surprised me is how accessible health and fitness is wherever you go. Doesn't mean it's easy by any means. It's definitely much easier when you're in one location, especially when it's like the UK, where a lot of healthy food is accessible. But it has surprised me that if you are willing to make the effort, you can certainly get the results you're after.
Yeah, absolutely. And Elliot, I'll give you the space to tell me if people want to get connected with your podcast or you personally. What's the best way they can do that?
They can head over to the Simply Fit podcast, which is a podcast that we put about 2 to 3 times per week. It's a health and fitness podcast and has got around over 450 episodes now. So plenty to get yourself stuck into once you've had a listen to this episode. And then if you want to know a little bit more about me and the coaching work I do, you can head over to my Instagram. It's just at Elliot Hasoon, which is two L's and a T, Hasoon. And you'll be able to get a lot of health and fitness, short and sharp tips, and you'll get a better understanding of who I am. And that's where you can go.
Oh, well, fantastic, Elliot. I want to thank you for the work that you do to move the needle of progress forward when it comes to our health and fitness journey, my friend. Your work in the space and time on my behalf today is most appreciated, and I want to thank you for engaging in conversation with me.
Thank you, Kevin. It's been a pleasure, and I really appreciate the work that you're doing as well.